The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Welcome to the Amber Mack Show. I am doing this week's show from beautiful Prince Edward Island, where I just moderated a session with Sira. A whole group of entrepreneurs from the island were there. Jeff, we have been preparing for this episode for a few days, but we were thrown a bit of a curveball recently. President Donald Trump and tech titan Elon Musk got into an online flame war over the past couple of days.
Boy, did they ever. And we're going to dedicate a full segment to that drama, which I got to add is still unfolding as we record this, and who knows where it might turn up. Also, welcome back to the Maritimes, where we finally have summertime, or at least more than one day of summertime in a row, which is good. Also known here in Canada as patio weather. And despite spending more relaxing time outside this time of the year, tech news isn't slowing down. So let's get into the headlines.
News feed.
As mentioned, Jeff and I are going to dive deep into what's happening right now with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, a social media slugfest. But we did want to touch on one aspect of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which is largely responsible for the feud. First, namely the inclusion, which has been big news the past few weeks, of a provision that bans AI regulation at the state and local level for a full decade.
Yeah, it's crazy. And before we get into that, I just want to say that there's two things about this that need to be set up front. So omnibus bills like this, where they cram in a ton of different legislation into one big bill, so you don't get a chance to vote on it line by line. Total abuse of power should be avoided. They get used too often. But legislatures should be able to vote on these things one at a time, not a million of them in one big, beautiful bill. Two, how can a government expect to be treated seriously when they literally name their omnibus bill the, quote, One Big Beautiful Bill Act? That's the actual name. Anyway, one of the many dumb ideas stuffed into this bill is a 10-year ban on states regulating AI, which I'm not alone in thinking that this is a very bad move, given that more than 260 state legislatures have also signed a letter opposing it.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand. It's really hard to imagine why a government would want to prevent any states from being able to put protections for consumers in place. And those protections are, of course, against harmful AI applications. And unfortunately, it's pretty easy to imagine, given the enormous contributions companies engaged in AI have made to the Trump presidency. This is a huge issue. One of the godfathers of AI here in Canada has pointed out, and I quote from the Financial Times, "There's unfortunately a very competitive race between the leading labs, which pushes them towards focusing on capability to make AI more and more intelligent, but not necessarily putting enough emphasis on investment on research and safety."
No kidding. And Yashua is one of many people involved in launching a nonprofit called Law Zero that's actually focused on building safer AI systems in the face of all the concerning recent behavior by AI models, much of which we've covered right here on the Amber Mack Show.
Yeah, we should say too, right? There are more and more people who are raising alarms about AI safety. Even CEO of Google's AI research arm, DeepMind, has said he's worried about a lack of guardrails to keep AI models under control. And we hear this all the time, all over the world, especially in the EU. Now, sticking on the topic of artificial intelligence, it looks like Reddit is suing Anthropic for using Reddit user data to train Anthropic's AI models.
Yeah, it sure is. And we've seen a bunch of different publishers and content creators sue AI companies over this kind of thing in the past. But this is actually the very first big tech company to sue over AI training data. And I hope there's more to come in the face of these AI companies essentially stealing data without paying for it so that they themselves can make more money. And speaking of big tech companies and exciting news, Amazon has recently announced that it's starting to test humanoid robots for package delivery.
I have to say, it is nice to see some news about non-military robots because, of course, when we talk about robots in the military, it is very concerning. Now, I can't see a lot of harm coming from this. Of course, there will be job displacement, which is an issue worth discussing. And it seems as though humans will still be driving these Amazon vans and that these robots will help to deliver the packages from the van to the customer's door. Amazon has even built an indoor obstacle course for the robots in San Francisco to train them. And Jeff, I think we need an immediate invite to see that.
Yes, I would love to see that. I'm sure they'll be releasing something on it, but yeah, that seems pretty cool. Frankly, if they could just program these robots to ring my freaking doorbell when they drop off a package so I know it's there, then I'd be totally supportive of this move. I don't know why human delivery people have such a problem doing this, but how many times are you sitting at home waiting for a package that gets delivered without a sound and then you find it hours later, usually in the rain? So I think the robots could actually deliver a better experience on this than a lot of the human drivers are, who are doing, a lot of them are doing just sort of gig jobs. I get why they're not taking it as the most serious thing in the world, but maybe this is actually an area where the robots can really help.
Well, I think that you might be underestimating how many people would tamper with the robots when they came to their door. So I just want to make that very clear. Now, in other news involving transportation, Uber has introduced a new type of account for seniors that provides a simpler app experience through its accessibility settings. Now, Uber has a few different accounts. They have teen accounts. It's great to see something that is really focused on seniors because we know seniors, Jeff, are using Uber to get to doctor's appointments. Maybe they aren't able to drive anymore. So I know you love user experience stories. What do you think about this one?
I honestly, this is kind of great. I'd love to see more of it for both, like you say, seniors, youth accounts. Those things make total sense. All users aren't the same. They've got different needs, and older users have some very specific needs. Obviously younger users, you may want to hide from certain types of content. Older users have different requirements. So these senior accounts in Uber, they can do the typical things like making text bigger and all that sort of stuff, but it lets you seniors more easily see ride updates for the family. They can use their family members' credit cards for payments and other things like that just by going into the accessibility settings and turning their account into a senior's account. So yeah, let's see more of that. I think that's better for users, and it's probably better for the companies involved too, to be given a better experience than having poor seniors completely lost in a really dense interface that they're like, I just want to do one thing here. Can it be easier to do it? It can, and I'm hoping that that's exactly what Uber's doing here.
Yeah, and I love that they focus on the accessibility side of this, right? I mean, just making this tech more accessible for more people. So, really, really cool. And I do believe this is available in Canada because, like I said, I've chatted about this on a recent media tour that we did where we were talking about seniors tech. So, really cool addition. Now, we're going to stick with car tech. Volvo has just released a new multi-adaptive safety belt system for use in upcoming models that uses information like the seatbelt wearer's height, their weight, their body shape, along with data from exterior sensors that helps really to optimize protection. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, very interesting, and actually also very interesting is that, did you know Volvo is actually the creator of the modern 3-point safety belt that we all use? It was introduced in 1959. So they've got a lot of history in this area. But yeah, there's not too many details out. Some people I saw online asking like, oh, will this adapt to like a woman's body versus a man's body, given the differences there? How far will this go? So it would be really interesting to see the results. However, unlike that classic seatbelt that Volvo introduced way back in 1959, it's not clear whether Volvo will share this particular patent with other automakers, but I'd love to see that happen. As anything that can make us all more safe would be wonderful. So good for Volvo for doing this, and let's see how they take the next steps.
Yeah, Volvo has been first over the years with so many advancements when it comes to safety. I don't know if you knew this, but in the 1990s, they were actually first to use female or small-sized crash test dummies in their safety tests. So really, really cool that they've always been a leader in this area as well.
Yeah, and historically, there's so many people who would make the choice to buy a Volvo because of those safety features. So, yeah, that reputation's been with them for a while and for a good reason.
All right. So, like we said off the top, we are going to get deep into what is going on between Musk and Trump and their social media feud a little bit later in the show. But to wrap up this week's news, it looks like Pornhub has officially blocked access to users in France because of new French laws requiring adult sites to verify the age of users. Jeff's going to talk about online age verification now in The Other Mac.
The Other Mac.
Online age verification has been a problem without a great solution for years, but now with over half a dozen US states having enacted online age verification bills, and many more on the way, plus the EU planning to introduce its own age verification app this summer, it's time for us all to understand what's at stake. There's a variety of major industries where age verification already takes place. Obviously, you already have to show ID to buy alcohol and tobacco, for example, but historically these checks happen in person, which removes a couple of major privacy concerns that exist online. Namely, your ID is not recorded and stored, nor is there any record of you having visited that location just by virtue of your ID being checked. So those are both positives. Now, probably the most common talked about area with respect to online age verification, although there are plenty, for example, the disgraceful tidal wave of online gambling we're unfortunately seeing now. But the most commonly talked about area is likely adult content, which, like many other things we require ID to access, is indisputably harmful to young people. And it also presents a very clear case for why people are so reluctant to embrace online age verification. Most sensible people don't want an adult site to have a copy of their government ID, and most people don't want to risk other people knowing what adult sites they visit. So what are our options to determine someone's age online? Well, the method where you just check a box to assure the site that you're visiting that you're actually of age is just laughably useless. Not sure why that exists. I'm sure it's some kind of liability thing. But obviously people can just lie, so I'm not sure how that is even out there in the wild. But the one that most parallels the real-world ID check is uploading identification documents that are scanned to determine your age. But as we've already discussed, this can be a major privacy issue if those documents are stored by the verifying party. Then there are highly technical but less reliable methods that include things like facial identification, where the verification site uses your camera to see your face in order to evaluate your age. Now, this can be done without your image being permanently saved, which is definitely a benefit, but the results can vary so much that it's also far from ideal. Now, in order to avoid having the issue with an adult or online gambling site directly accessing your data, there are many third-party services that will do online age checks, which still leaves your data vulnerable, but at least it's under the control of a company that likely takes digital security more seriously than many sites you'd be trying to access. Although obviously these companies themselves are very attractive targets for hackers because of that exact data. Now, a recent compelling solution involving France's École Polytechnique adds an intermediary between the website you're trying to access and whoever is conducting the age verification, which means the website doesn't have access to your ID and the age verifier doesn't know which sites you're going to. Instead, the intermediary service passes the age verification request to the verifying entity and then passes the results of verification, basically a yes, they're old enough or no, they're not old enough, back to the website. This is a definite improvement. Now, whatever the approach, it doesn't seem like the challenge of online age verification is going to go away anytime soon. So it's important that we all know the risks and that any required verification is done in a way that poses the least danger to your personal information, which includes not just your identification, but also the sites you visit. I'm The Other Mac. Stay safe out there.
Post-mortem.
Now, let's dive into the Musk Trump feud that's going on south of the border in the United States. It all started on Tuesday, June 3rd. Many outlets have timelines of what has happened over the past few days. The one I was reading is from The Independent, and it shares how starting on that day on June 3rd, it was 1:31 p.m. Washington time, where Musk attacked the big, beautiful bill. And then it was a couple of days of chaos as Trump responded. Jeff, let's go through this timeline step by step for people who aren't familiar with what went on.
Yeah, so the feud really started on Thursday. And surprisingly, in this feud, Trump has actually posted considerably less than Musk from what I've seen. So, not the person you'd usually expect to have more self control, but there it is. But the seeds for this were really sown on Tuesday when, as you say, Musk posted about Trump's big, beautiful bill, saying that, I quote, this massive, outrageous, pork filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. So that's a pretty heavy handed start. But then it's really Thursday when everything starts to break loose here. So Musk shared years old comments from Trump and from other people in government about U.S. spending. By noon, that gets around to Trump, who posts or doesn't post. He was actually talking with reporters, I think, that he's very disappointed and that, quote, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore. And this is less than a week after they were both showering each other with compliments on Elon's supposed last day of working for government. So in response to this, Musk posted, without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. And then he followed it by such ingratitude. Now, what do you think? Are these maybe two of the least grateful people you've ever seen in your life? So strange reaction there. And then 20 minutes later, Musk posts, a couple hours later, Musk posts, is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle? This got over 5 million votes, and 80% of people said yes. Now, again, I'm curious for your thoughts, Amber. Is Elon Musk the one to be identifying that we need a new political party that represents the 80% in the middle?
Well, here's the thing with a lot of what he posts, right? He has a massive army of people, millions and millions of people who follow him. They are such uber fans of his. So anything that he wants to do, they're going to agree with. This isn't a post of the average person, and in saying that, I'm sure there are lots of people in the US who think that, okay, we should have other options. I mean, everybody loves options. So it is kind of, I think, in line with some of the things that Elon Musk has always said, which is asking really obvious, basic questions. Like people have tried to assign this crown to him of being kind of a genius or the king of tech or EVs. But the reality is, I think what we've seen over and over again is he is a very simplistic, a very cruel, and a very childish man. And that's kind of spelled out as you go through this very confusing and immature timeline.
Absolutely. And we can't forget that Musk donated, I think it was over $250 million. I think it was $274 million to Trump's campaign. So he knowing that and seeing how after this new political party post, 20 minutes later, Musk posted, Trump has 3.5 years left as president, but I will be around for 40 plus years, which his alleged ketamine addiction may have something to say about whether he's going to be around in 40 years. But what a stance for somebody to take where he's basically putting himself above the president and saying that he'll have more influence over time than any president will, by virtue of his extraordinary amount of money and, like you say, his kind of cult following. And this didn't sit well with Trump either. So Trump then got onto Truth Social, which, just so you know, at the end of Thursday, I believe Tesla shares were down 14.2% or something like that, which is $152 billion loss. So that's crazy. But also Trump's Truth Social shares were down 8%. Trump's crypto, Trump crypto, whatever you call it, it was down 12%. So these are having real world effects. Anyway, so Trump responded with, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. And he just went crazy. And then he delivers the big line. This is from Trump at 2:37 Eastern on Thursday. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it, he says. This from a man that has called Biden a moron, basically. And he's surprised that Biden didn't do the smart thing that he didn't do, but he's now thinking about. And again, the childish tone in this conversation is just stunning, Amber.
It is absolutely stunning. I mean, the thing that I really don't understand is, why do all of these conversations have to happen in public? You know, we saw this with President Trump, even when Zelensky came to the White House, right? This insistence on having media everywhere. We saw it when our own Prime Minister, Mark Carney, went to the White House. The media was everywhere, you know, surrounding them during these conversations. And I think one of the things, when people want to live out their lives and do business and run countries in public like this, a lot of it, I think, is self-serving, because they are such narcissists, right? They thrive on all of the drama and the attention. And, you know, I hate to say it, Jeff, and I think you saw some of these posts going around over the past few days, a lot of women who were fans of Kamala or even Hillary Clinton saying, oh yeah, girls are too emotional, or women are too emotional to be able to take positions of power. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because these guys are fighting like they are children on a schoolyard playground in elementary school, maybe even in kindergarten.
Yeah, and there's lots of harm being done. Keep in mind, and we're leaving out tons of we're giving a rough overview of this. There are so many more posts, especially by Elon, who is definitely posting away for ages here. After Trump talked about how they could save billions and billions of dollars by terminating Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts, Elon responded 4:09 p.m., so an hour and a half later, in light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contracts. They're not your contracts, Elon. They're not with you. They're with your companies. But anyway, in light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contracts, at SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately. Now, this is the craft that is used to take NASA astronauts to and from the International Space Station. It's an absurd threat to make. With obviously, he didn't consult anyone at SpaceX. He's making these unilateral decisions out in public, like you're saying, that are so poorly thought out. And thankfully, this is one point that Musk did back down on. But I think it was about 5 hours later or so, I'm sure he got an earful from someone at SpaceX. But in response to somebody's tweet, he's like, oh yeah, you do have a good point. I should calm down. So we won't be decommissioning the Dragon spacecraft. And it's like, is this how your decisions are being made? It's again, there's nobody I've seen in history that is more dedicated to damaging their own reputation than Elon Musk. Trump, I don't think, knows what he's doing. Elon is just out there. He's holding the chainsaw by the wrong end.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's and I know you have the timeline really written out here to give people a sense of what happened, but I think as we get to even 3 o'clock on that same day, this is when the really big bomb does take place, when at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's what Elon Musk says, and says that is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. For our final point, Laura had a really good comment about all of this that we can wrap up this conversation with for now.
Absolutely. So our old colleague from Command, Ann Lara, who was born in Vermont, has American citizenship, but she's also Canadian, said, and I think this is a great way to look at it, it's going to be hard to pick up all the pieces in America when they're burning everything to ash. And
Totally
I
true.
think just leave it at that because, what are you going to do when you're doing this kind of damage to your own country, to your own government, to your own people, and at this point, to yourself?
Coming up next, we're going to, talk about something a little more serious, which is the future of AI and work. And we're going to share how one big tech company is making it easier for Canadians to get access to AI skills training.
The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
On June 4th, Google Canada will announce the creation of an AI Opportunity Fund, which will provide 13 million Canadian dollars to 4 Canadian organizations that are providing AI skills training across the country. We talk a lot on the show about building new AI skills, so Amber spoke with Sabrina Jeremiah, the VP and Country Managing Director for Google Canada, about what this announcement means for Canadians.
AI Spotlight.
When we look at how AI can help Canadians, one of the things that I noticed in the press release is the focus on being more productive, also saving time to do other tasks. Let's talk a little bit about the productivity crisis that we face right now. How can skills training like this help?
Well, productivity is an opportunity for Canada, and I think this is part of the solution. So, what AI is you know this as well as anyone, is it's a tool that's actually going to help reimagine so many ways of working and getting things done. And it could actually boost Canada's economy by $230 billion and save the average Canadian worker 175 hours per year. So this is basically taking, repetitive tasks, automating them so that workers and people can skill up, do different things, and use their time elsewhere. And the other thing is it's not just the time savings that I'm very bullish about. Canada has been such a leader in AI research. Like, we had the pioneers, we developed a lot of the tech here. And if we're leaders in the AI actually adoption, the way that we were in the research, we're going to build new things. We're going to create new solutions and we're going to find new ways to make Canada more productive. And we're already seeing this in a lot of areas in healthcare, in agriculture, in teaching. But unless we have the Canadian entire population just understanding what it is and having the skills to use it, even on a basic level, we're not going to be able to unlock that potential.
So I know from speaking to many different groups across different sectors across this entire country about AI that people are nervous, they're anxious, they don't know where to start. Can you talk a little bit about this training specifically in terms of what they will learn, where they can get access to it as well?
So this AI training is called AI Essentials. It's part of Grow with Google. And you can go to Grow with Google and just look up Grow with Google AI Essentials. It's actually the most popular Gen AI course on Coursera. So it is very popular. And when you look at what you're going to learn, it's going to really explain what AI is, how it's made, a little bit about the technology behind it, a little bit around, the bold and responsible AI, and it's going to take you through exercises. So give you opportunities to learn how to use it. I remember when I did it, it actually made me do a marketing pitch for a dog company. So it was really fun to just go in and get your hands on the keyboard and start to use it. And you're trained by Google experts. So there are videos from some of the people that, are really at the forefront of this. And what's so great about these courses, if you look at the whole basket of the Grow with Google courses that we do, 54,000 Canadians have graduated with these micro credentials. And these are not semester long courses like in university, they're micro credentials. So you can do them, on a Friday afternoon or in between meetings or on a weekend. And when we talk to those 54,000 people and we ask them, like, what happened after you took that course? We actually learned that 75% of them had a positive career outcome. So they got a raise, they got a new job, they could have had a different project that they were working on. So I think, just getting this skilling into the hands of Canadians is so important. I think this AI moment is just too big not to make the most out of. And it really starts with having Canadians who know what AI is and know how to put it to work for themselves, for their jobs, and then for their communities.
There's quite a range in terms of the different groups that are getting some of this funding, right? All the way from a public library right here in Toronto to an AI group out west. Can you talk a little bit about how that's divided and what the goal of that is?
Yeah, so if we look at, how we chose these organizations, the first thing is they all have outstanding track records and they are really amazing organizations who do a lot of great work in the community. So the first group is Amy, and they're based in Edmonton. What they're focused on is how do we answer the question, what does AI skilling or what does AI foundational knowledge look like in post secondary education? So a lot of kids are going to be going off to university and they're always asking the question, like, what is AI? How am I allowed to use it? How shouldn't I use it? And these are questions that really, not one employer, not one government can answer. We need to do it as a team sport. So Amy's going to be gathering 25 different post-secondary education institutions and leaders across Canada. And they're going to work together to try to figure out how to bring this into the curriculum. So I'm very excited about that. The First Nations Technology Council is doing the same sort of thing, and that they're starting with questions like how do we partner with the communities, with Indigenous peoples to really understand how to bring these in demand AI skills to Indigenous people across Canada. And then the Toronto Public Library, we know that it is the most visited public library system in North America. It's such a thing to be proud of right here in Toronto. And Skills for Change is an incredible organization that gets out skill training and entrepreneur training to underserved communities across Canada. They're really going to be doing a lot of the hard working, getting out the AI essentials to the 2 million plus Canadians. So if you were to walk into a Toronto Public Library, I would hope that you would see a flyer on the bulletin board or talk to the librarian and understand that there might be an AI essentials learning group that you could join. Because as much as it's great to go online and do these courses, sometimes Canadians just need a little bit of support. They want a learning group, they want to meet new people, they want to learn with other people. So that's what Toronto Public Library and Skills for Change are going to be doing.
So one of the things that I've noticed in some of my conversations that I'm having with small business owners, I've been noticing that there's a gap there too, right? A lot of small business owners keen to learn how to use AI. Sometimes these are the forgotten Canadians in many ways. You know, we address people who need to build those skills, kind of who are at the lower end of tech skills, and then maybe the larger businesses. But how can this help those entrepreneurs and small business owners, which make up a huge part of our population and support our economy?
Oh, this is such a great tool for a small business owner. I've been coaching a friend who is a small business owner and just trying to get them really powered up in AI skills because I think this is now giving you the leverage of what you need as a small business owner. You have to be the master of everything, right? And so you can go to the AI to help write a business plan. And you can go and understand different ways to attract different target audiences. There is a flower shop in Milton called Karen's Flowers, and they used one of our AI powered marketing tools called PMax, and they were able to get 10% more customers buying from their store in Milton. And they were able to do it at 30% less per cost per person that they attracted. So this is something that, a couple of years ago, only large organizations had the capabilities to be able to do that kind of marketing campaign. And now we can put that into the hands of a small business owner in Milton. And if you think about, 98% of our economy are SMBs, if every small business owner could learn how to use these tools, you talked earlier about productivity. That's one of the building blocks of productivity is getting people to ladder up and create more value. And that's exactly what I would like to see happen. But it starts with just baby steps, right? Like understanding what it is, trying it out. But what I've noticed is that people get really good really quickly, right? It needs Canadians are smart, you don't really need to give them a ton of instructions. You just need to put the opportunity in their hands. And I know that they will make the most out of it.
Just a couple more questions for you. I wanted to ask what you would say to people who are fearful of AI. I mean, there's a lot of fear mongering out there in the media and beyond. What would you say to people who are worried about the future of AI? How can you help to sort of reduce some of those fears that they might have?
Well, the first thing is try it. So we did a bit of research around this, and when Canadians try it and they use it and they start seeing how it works and they understand it a little bit more, I think that dampens a little bit of the fear and makes them understand what it is and what it isn't. So that's really why we're hoping that more and more people will just try the tools, use the tools, and make it work for them. The second thing is, I think there's always like that fear is AI going to replace my job? And the reality is that AI is a tool that's going to transform so many aspects of work, but it is actually just a complement, right? It's an augmentation to your work. So if you are a coder, you would be using AI to help you code, and it's going to make you more productive and more effective. If you're a farmer, you may be using AI to optimize your crop yields. If you're a teacher, in the future, you'll be using AI to have individualized learning for all the kids in your class. This weekend, I actually helped my daughter out with a French exam that she had. And as an experiment, I handed her my phone and I said, talk to Gemini. It speaks better French than I do. And so then she started to do that and get feedback on her French, and it was outstanding. And then I stopped it and I said, okay, now let's try the questions again. And her learning went up so much just from having used that tool. So if you really look at it as something that's going to augment and complement, then I think that really changes the frame and it makes you more excited to learn it because it's like something to help you become super skilled at so many things that maybe you don't have the time to do. And then there's a totally other aspect, which I think is really exciting, is that when I was 13, this job that I'm doing today didn't exist. Like the internet didn't exist, right? Neither did mobile phones, Amber, but that's another story. But my kids are 14, and when they talk to me like, "What am I gonna do when I grow up?" What we all talk about is, "We're not sure, but it's gonna be exciting, and you might have a new job that doesn't exist right now as well, or you might be doing a job that you know what it is today, but it is going to be augmented by AI." And I think if we take that frame and we think about AI as a tool and we think about AI as a tool that's going to make ourselves more productive, help us solve problems, help us plan vacations, meal plans, whatever it is that you're passionate about. And then we can ladder that into productivity gains by making businesses, SMBs, and large businesses. I think that's what the real power is. But the one worry I have, Amber, is we are falling a little bit behind on on basically adopting AI. So there was a Deloitte study that says, 26% of businesses in Canada have adopted and it's 34% globally. So we're a little behind. I'm not worried because I have a lot of yeah, I just know Canadians are going to catch up and this is just one step into going into that direction.
Excellent. So, last question for you because you answered a question I had about how do you prepare the next generation. I think both of us, as parents of teens, certainly that exposure to these AI tools to augment how kids learn is so powerful. Finally, for people who are listening to this, and we have listeners from all across the country, how do they go about getting access potentially to maybe one of these programs that's being rolled out or other learning tools from Google?
Yeah, well, if you want to start with like AI essentials, which I think is just sort of the foundational one to start with on AI learning, just go to Grow with Google. Go to Google, type in Grow with Google AI Essentials. Again, the most popular AI course on Coursera, and you can start that. If you want a little bit more of a supportive environment, walk into your Toronto Public Library if you're in Toronto. If you're outside of Toronto, look up Skills for Change and see the programs that they are running. And then hopefully, by the time our kids are in university, Amber, like, the work that Amy is doing right now to figure out how to integrate it into the curriculum will already be done. So I think some of that is going to come with it and also for Indigenous people across Canada. But just start with the Grow with Google or just start using the tools, whatever tool it is, start using it and seeing how it can work for you.
All great advice. And I think it's also worth noting we had a guest on the show recently who was talking about AI as a Canadian story. I mean, we have really deep roots here in this country on the AI front. So it looks like you are equally optimistic that maybe we can catch up a little bit and continue this AI story.
Yeah, I think we have such a powerful story of AI pioneering in Canada. And now I want to see Canadians really take the tool, build with it, learn how to make it work for themselves, learn how to create value with it. And that's like, that's part of the big economic transformation story that's underway. This is a real opportunity, and I really want us to take advantage of it.
Excellent. Well, listen, Sabrina, thank you so much. I always love sitting down and chatting with you and catching up on all things Google, and really appreciate you taking the time to join me on the Amber Mac Show.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be here. Great to see you too.
Thanks, Sabrina and Amber. Before our next segment, we wanted to tell you about the Echo Podcast Summit that's happening in Halifax later this month.
Hey, quick question. Who do you trust in today's media landscape? If you're into podcasts, you're part of one of the most powerful and most personal forms of media out there. But how is that trust built? And what happens when it breaks? On June 19th, Halifax is hosting something big, the Echo Podcast Summit, the largest podcasting event in Atlantic Canada. Brought to you by Acast and Podstarter, it's a full day of bold conversations at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, all about the future of trust in podcasting, from parasocial relationships to the line between journalism and branded content. If you care about where podcasts are going and how we build credibility in a world full of noise, this is the room to be in. Get your tickets now at echopodcastsummit.com, and trust me, you don't want to miss this.
Thanks, Amber. I'll actually be at the Echo Podcast Summit, so I hope to see some of you there. Coming up next, we speak to a cybersecurity expert about staying safe when you use large language models like ChatGPT at work.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Tony Anscombe is the Chief Security Evangelist at ESET. He visited our studio in Toronto to chat with Amber about how to stay safe when using large language models like ChatGPT at work.
Talking Tech.
I'm super excited to be sitting down with Tony Anscombe, who is the Chief Security Evangelist at ESET. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Amber.
We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, but we want to dig in a little bit to talk about some of the large language models that do exist, whether that's ChatGPT or DeepSeek. How common is it for employees within companies to be using these tools?
I think it's incredibly common, actually, because if you want to rephrase something, if you're putting content together, then actually using one of these tools to rephrase it, create it to start with, and allow you to reword it, I think is becoming more commonplace. It puts the structure, the bones of content together for a lot of people.
How risky is it for a business to have their employees using some of these tools that perhaps may have not been approved by the company?
Well, we have to remember that these tools are public and they're learning from the questions that maybe you're uploading from them as well. So now imagine if I ask you a question about, can you rephrase this email I'm about to send Amber Mac? Yeah, and suddenly I've already added a piece of personal information in there because I've put Amber Mac and maybe your email address, or there's some other content in there that's personal. Suddenly I'm adding that into a public domain system. So if somebody else then comes along and asks a question later on about Amber Mac, is the content I uploaded being used to answer their question? So suddenly the personal information I was holding about you from my company may well be entering the public domain.
We know that this is fairly common in terms of employees using some of these tools, but what does a company do to avoid issues that may come from some of the employees accessing some of these tools that aren't necessarily approved?
Well, as a company, the best thing to do is actually limit the access to it, but also train the employees to make them understand that there are times to use it and times not to use it. So make sure they understand the limitations. You don't want to be putting customer-sensitive data in it, product-sensitive data, copyrighted, or anything that's intellectually belonging to the company shouldn't be uploaded. But if you want to rephrase, if you've got an abstract for a conference or something like that, and you want to rephrase it, get it in great grammar, then go ahead. Use one of those tools to maybe rephrase it.
So it's really training is one piece of it, but you touched on something else that I think a lot of companies are forgetting, which is having AI policies in place. How important is that right now?
Oh, that's super important, because if you don't have the policies in place, what will happen is employees will start going off and using not just one of these tools, they'll start using various, and then you'll have different offices using different tools, and it will actually be much harder to bring the policy together. So it's actually better to have the policy up front and get people using it the way you want to use it and in a secure and private fashion, so that you're controlling it.
So really, it's two parts. So having the policy in place and having training around usage. But really, actually, there's a third part too, because you could build your own.
Well, I think a lot of companies are going down that path because there's this new technology. They've seen how it works because we can engage with it. That's the exciting part, isn't it? Now, if you've got anything where you've got customer support or customer questions coming in, and you can put up a system that, in effect, gives self-help to those customers or automates part of that process, that's a good thing. But of course, you need the data to train those models. And that's where the caution should really step in. You need to understand what you're doing. This is not as easy as, well, I'll just give it all my data and suddenly, somebody can come along and ask a question. What data? How good was the data? Did the data have any personal information? Was there any company sensitive information in it? So you have to be really cautious about how you're training these models.
So let's say, hypothetically speaking, although I know there are real world examples of this, a company has not done that. They have not been careful about managing what data is being collected. What is the risk? You're a cybersecurity expert. What problems could arise?
Well, unfortunately, there's quite a lot of problems. I mean, firstly, on the privacy front. So if I took all of the conversations that a customer support person has had online, in one of those web systems over time and uploaded that into the model, there may well be personal information. People may have given the customer support person their phone number or their email address. Now, asking those questions, somebody coming along on a public system and asking those questions, potentially they could surface that personal information. And suddenly that's a data breach, because you're then disclosing other customers' information. Or imagine I'm using it for maybe creating invoices or maybe I'm creating quotes or things like that. There's a lot of personal and specific information in those type of things. So you've got to be really cautious how you build them. But also, you need to make sure not only that you've cleansed the data, that you're also protecting the system from abuse. Because what happens then if somebody comes and seeds your system with something bad, or you've built your model off of the back of somebody else's solution? So you're not going to start from scratch, are you? You're going to go along and turn and say, oh, there's an LLM customer service system. I'll take that, and then I'll upload my data into it. How do you know what the original core system was modeled on, and how secure was that? Because that's a supply chain issue. Maybe we don't think of that being in our supply chain.
So when we look at some of the risks that do exist, and from what I'm hearing, it is fair to say that companies, especially in 2025, are adopting artificial intelligence in meaningful ways. They're taking action. They realize they need this technology to thrive. At the same time, I would assume that cyber criminals are also using AI. How does that play into the mix here?
Well, so take now from a cyber criminal's perspective, I could come along and maybe poison your AI system. I mean, that's one potential where this might go, is you come along and rather than exfiltrating data and taking data, maybe I just come and mess your model up and then tell you that I can clean your model back up for you if you pay me. So there's that potential. But also, you don't want your AI model to be abused. So if you, for example, are a software, a software creation company providing software tools, you don't want somebody to come along to that model and turn and say, can you create me a piece of malware or create me something that looks for vulnerabilities in browsers? So you've got to actually protect the output, that the output from the model as well is not providing a malicious intent.
How can a company possibly keep up with both the opportunities that exist and the threats that exist? Because things are moving so quickly right now. It's very difficult. It's like whack-a-mole in some ways.
But as technology moves that fast, we have to keep up. I think the thing that I'd stress is make sure you've got somebody in the organization that is experienced with it and actually understands it. This is not a project you throw at your IT team and say, can I have this by next Friday? Because it's unlikely you've got the right skill sets in that IT team. So actually go out and get an expert in AI who understands how to secure the system, how to limit the access to the system, etc. And there are other considerations in there. What I define as fairly standard security considerations. you put up a customer service system using an AI LLM in that way, then a cyber criminal will come along and create a denial of service attack against it. And suddenly it goes offline and your business stops. So you have to protect these assets in the same way you've protected other assets previously. Just because it's new, it doesn't mean it can't be touched.
I speak to a lot of different audiences through my keynotes on artificial intelligence across different industries. And maybe I'm overstating this a little bit, but it feels to me like companies are eager to adopt AI, but just based on some of the opportunities and threats, it maybe also feels like they may not be ready in some ways with the right people, the right teams, the right security measures. What would you say to all of that?
Well, firstly, as a company, I think everybody should be thinking about how they could use AI if they haven't done already, because there are significant benefits in using some of these automated systems. You take the mundane parts of your business and automate those. You leave the employees actually doing the interesting stuff. So there are benefits to it, that does raise the question, of course, of what does that do to somebody's job if it replaces them. Typically, I don't think people are being replaced. I think they just get more interesting things to do. But companies need to really think about what it is they want to achieve. It's not about saying, yes, we're using AI, putting the AI badge on the website. It's what was the actual outcome, and making sure that what you do gives you that outcome and is done in a secure and sensible fashion, responsible fashion.
ESET does a lot of work in this space. So for people who want more information, where's the best place for them to go and also to follow you?
Well, as a cybersecurity company, we've been using AI for a number of years, actually. The late 90s was our first venture into the AI using neural networks in some of our back-end systems. So we've got a long experience here. So we've written a number of white papers that would be interesting for people to read on how to secure AI systems and where we think the AI evolution is going. So you can find that on welivesecurity.com.
Excellent. Well, I know we're going to have a few more conversations throughout the course of the year. So thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks to ESET for supporting the Amber Mac Show. You can see Tony's work over on the welivesecurity.com cybersecurity blog. That's all for today's show. As always, you can watch our segments on YouTube and be sure to hit that subscribe button.
If you're looking for another way to stay on top of the latest tech news, I wanted to remind you that every Tuesday I send out a free email newsletter that will land in your inbox, and it's all about what's happening in technology and more. Each week we dive into what's happening in artificial intelligence. We also do regular segments on climate tech. Please join our community of 10,000 subscribers. All you have to do is head on over to my website. That's ambermac.com/newsletter, and you can join for free and sign up as we try to navigate our fast future better together. We have been loving your feedback online lately, so we're going to add more opportunities for you to share your thoughts on the Amber Mac Show in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.
You're listening to the Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.